Well, there hasn't been any mail deliveries out here for a while. Hi everybody, Florida Trailblazer, checking in with all of you out here in this beautiful wilderness, roaming through the woods today along this creek. And a good portion of it is dried up. So I've been following it for a little while now. Enjoying the scenery out here. And there appears to be an old path or roadway here where the creek has led me. I'll follow this for a little ways. This path seems to go on for a little while, and a lot of these old pathways out here were used as roads at one time. People lived in these areas during the 1800s and early to mid-1900s, all throughout these places, and they would oftentimes utilize these roadways. Take a look at this. There's some remains over here in the woods. See part of a structure over there as well. Seeing evidence over here from what could have been part of a homestead or ranch out here at one time. Oftentimes these areas were used for various purposes over the years. You can see here behind me part of the structure. It's a fairly large structure. It's the other side of the structure. Take a look at this. There's even a mailbox. Well, there hasn't been any mail deliveries out here for a while. See some pieces of wood around the area. So you can see the building has collapsed and mostly just the roof remains. A lot of the supports. Some blocks in there. It's mostly just part of this structure remains. I'm seeing a lot of debris around the area. Evidence from people that were once out here in this place. It's a beautiful and peaceful area here in the wilderness. And it's hard to say, but this site may have been used for many years. Could have been other structures out here at one time, long ago. These sites change over time. And today, nature is reclaiming this area. But you can still see remnants from the past, and you get a sense of the history in these places. Takes you back to another time, and I imagine many memories were made here over the years. See some fencing here around the perimeter of the property. Just came through the woods from that direction. Followed that creek for a while. Led me out to this opening. And there's a path here I've been following as well. Maybe some sort of old game trail or hunt path, something like that. But it's leading me towards the direction of the river. And we're going to explore along there for a little ways. Exploring this area and found this old railroad grade. It's hard to make out, but it's elevated above the surrounding wilderness here. And many of these railroad grades are overgrown, and they were used long ago during the logging and turpentine era all throughout these areas of Florida. Big part of the history here. See if you can get a view behind me. That's part of the grade. And try to follow it the best that I can. Starting to be able to make out this railroad grade a little bit more now. You can see it right here. Continues on that way. There's the railroad grade behind me. And it's amazing because walking along this, you get these views of these areas here in the wilderness. Just opens up. Seeing lots of pines out in this area. This railroad's actually leading me towards a river where it would have crossed over. I imagine this was utilized by both the logging and turpentine industries. Turpentine was once Florida's largest industry. Had an array of uses, and there were many turpentine camps all around Florida. And a lot of times you'd see them in these areas by the railroad grades, in the pine forests. They would tap the pine trees for the sap and resin, which was used in the production of making turpentine. And these railroad lines provided a method of transportation, shipping out the products, bringing in people. And it was just a active place. And now look out here, it's just completely quiet. It's just the nature and traces from the past. Now, after these turpentine camps were abandoned and the resources were used up, oftentimes the logging industry would come in and take down the pine trees as well. Starting to get denser back here. You can see the grade there. It's a little overgrown in this section, so I was just following alongside of it. The dried up creek here, where the railroad would have crossed over. You can see the grade here. What's interesting about this section is you can see these cypress logs here where this grade crossed over the creek. And I've seen this before at other grades in the swamp, they would take these cypress logs, lay them across these creek bed areas, and use these as sort of a bridge to cross over. There would have been more of these, would have been built up all in this section. Here's something buzzing over here. There's probably some bees or something down here. The railroad grade continues on this direction. I thought this was interesting. Starting to approach some of these cypress swamps out here, and you can see the water levels get up to this area at least at certain times of the year, and probably even higher. With this beautiful cypress tree. The shape of this one is incredible. Part of it's pointing that direction. If left undisturbed, this tree can grow for hundreds and thousands of years. See the grade here? And there would have been a bridge at this location to cross over to swamps to the other side of the grade over there. You can see the cypress logs laid across this area. Wow, getting very dense in this area. I'm getting close to the river, and it's hard to follow this grade in a lot of the different areas because it gets overgrown. I've been doing my best to stay in the general direction of it. It's right there. But as I go through some of these swampy areas near the river, it gets more dense back in here. Turning out to be quite the adventure. You never know what to expect, what you're going to see when you follow some of these areas into the wilderness. A lot of spider webs, that's for sure. Walking around a lot of those. Here's a small creek crossing. Now, I'm hoping that when I get to this river where the railroad once crossed over, that I'm able to navigate along the river for ways and explore that. And I may try to circle back around and see if there's any other railroad grades in this area, but ideally I don't want to go back this direction that I've been walking. I'm at this area here in the swamps where the grade appears to come to an end, but I'm not sure. I can barely see it through there. And the river is this direction, just a little ways ahead. Well, I lost the railroad grade. It ended a little ways back there. And I'm going to continue on into these swamps. I have to make it towards this river because my plan is to navigate that around through the woods and go back a different direction. Well, I made it to the river area, and in this part of the swamps, it's dried out. Normally, most of this would be underwater. There's some of the river. It's a nice view of the river here. I actually see some baby alligators just up ahead. Maybe hard to see right now, but they're floating in the water. Several of them out there. I see them. Oh, this is interesting. I was scouting along the river here, and I found the other side of the railroad grade that I was exploring earlier, and you can see the bridge pilings here where it crossed over the river. There's another one over here. And let's take a walk over this section. Because you can see the other side of the railroad grade right here. So I'm glad I found this side of the railroad. I was exploring for miles on that side of the river along this same grade. So it's nice to know that I can come back to this part of the river, follow this grade into some other areas of the forest, but for now I'm going to explore further along the river this direction, see what else we can discover. Main thing is I didn't want to get to the railroad grade on that side and not be able to find it over here, or it may be too swampy or too flooded to continue on, and I have to find an alternate route out of this area. But now that I found this section, it gives me a little more confidence to explore these woods, go further out. And it's a great time to do it because the water levels are so low along this river. Normally I wouldn't be able to walk back in here. Seeing some of these old cypress tree stumps out here. Take a look at this old cypress stump. Seeing all this cypress wood out here reminds me of the Native American Indian history in the area. Hundreds and thousands of years natives inhabited these places. And they used the cypress wood to build dugout canoes, and they could travel the waterways. Exploring along part of this river, and you see remains from a railroad grade here. There's old bridge pilings. And the railroad grade continued that way across the river. I found this railroad grade here, and it's leading me away from the river. I'm going to follow this out of the woods best that I can. It's hard to really tell where the grade goes in certain areas because it's so overgrown. But I managed to navigate away for many miles along that river. So beautiful, and seeing all the history and wildlife.